Great. Warm welcome to a special episode of the Monday Morning Learning Podcast. We're looking at the fourth episode of the Campus Catalyst series, and today our special guest is Shubhayu Sengupta, an XLRI alumnus. Warm welcome, Shubhayu. Today we have four students from two campuses, Sruti from Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Priyanshi, Chaitanya, and Janice from the Goa Institute of Management. Shubhayu, any welcome words before we go further?
No, thank you for inviting me, Ravi. It's always a pleasure to be part of your sessions, and a warm welcome to the students. I think while I guess studying and working over weekends as part of your course becomes an integral part of the curriculum these days, but it's not always easy that too on a Sunday before Diwali and so early in the morning. I mean, most of the folks in my family are still asleep, including my college-going daughter. So thanks so much for making time.
Thank you, Shubhayu. A quick intro of Shubhayu. He comes with more than 27 years of deep human resources experience across both line HR and consulting in global corporations across multiple geographies and domains. He's worked in the Big Four consulting professional services organizations, global financial institutions out of the US and Europe, and in the BPM sector in the healthcare business. Currently, he's leading the people function in a founder-driven banking technology company, Zeta, which is transforming the payments and credit space globally. Now, we want you guys to introduce yourself, starting with Priyanshi. A quick intro about yourself, your course, and something around your university as well.
Uh, Thank you so much for having me on the podcast first. My name is Priyanshi Chawla and I am currently pursuing my MBA from Goa Institute of Management. It is a 2 year course wherein I am specializing in human resources. Prior to this, I have a background in psychology and I have also worked in talent acquisition a little bit. And I am really looking forward to this conversation with all of you.
Hey, wonderful, nice to meet you. I've always wondered how do folks study in Goa, but considering there's also a very good medical and engineering school as well, I'm sure you folks have that covered. So
We have
yeah,
the best of both worlds.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and psychology. By the way, my daughter is studying psychology now. She's in the third year. So welcome to the show, Priyanshi.
Thank you.
Right, Chaitanya.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you everyone for inviting me here and be a part of this podcast. So I'm from the same college, Goa Institute of Management. I'm an HR major here, currently in the second year. In terms of experience, I'm a fresher, but I've interned at a lot of companies during my undergraduation and summers at GIM as well. So I was part of RCesium last summer, and I've also worked with Schneider Electric and Adani Enterprises. But bit of my projects, I'm more into LLMs, and I've made my own HR solutions where I've automated a lot of repetitive, redundant HR processes. So that's my field of interest. That's Chaitanya for you, sir.
Very nice to have you on board, Chetan, and look forward to an interesting conversation. Thank
Sure.
you.
Janice.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for having me to the podcast. Interestingly, I also have a background in psychology. I've practiced as a therapist for 3 years before doing my second master's in HR. And I'm very excited to be on this podcast and have the conversations that we all are going to have. At the same time, talking about my college, it has been a question for everyone, Shubhayu, that how do people study in Goa? But the fact that this college supports a good balance of how do we study and then how do we navigate our lives also. So I think the learning aspect of our MBA journey is covered by the college very well. So very excited to be here.
Oh, lovely to meet you, Janice. And I think that was more a comment in jest because I would have given my, arms, leg, shoulder to go and study in Goa. Not because of anything else. I'm sure the academic rigor is as much as any other college. But I think we just love the place. Uh,
Yeah, it got an appeal to it.
yeah, and one thing that I must mention that my daughter being in psychology keeps telling me all the time that why on earth did I waste a seat in engineering and should have instead studied psychology if I'd wanted to finally be building a career in HR. But that's what it is. Lovely to have you on board, Janice.
Likewise.
Shruti.
Hi everyone, good morning. So I am Sruti and I'm happy to be here today. And I am representing the Shri Institute of Higher Learning. And it is a university founded by Sri Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba and that emphasize value-based education. So it's a place where academics and character development go hand in hand and shaping us to lead with both competence and compassion. So, as an MBA student specializing in HR, so I'm deeply interested in how technology and empathy can work together in the world of HR, and that a theme that connects beautifully with today's discussion also. So, I have interned with Strive, so I'm really looking forward for this discussion today.
Lovely to have you here, Sai. And I think you're speaking about a eternal challenge, which I think is becoming talked about a lot more now. But I've always believed it has been something which has been the cornerstone of how we work with people in organizations, which is about you know integrating technology with something which is so inherent in the business because we work with people. So integrating technology with compassion, uh,
Yes,
I think it's so critical. So very nice to have you here.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, guys. So, two segments today. The first segment, we have four themes. The first one on human AI equation in modern HR, led by Priyanshi. Second one, led by Shruti, on the human connection in the tech world. Chaitanya leads a strategic and analytical lens. And finally, Janice on curiosity-driven emerging leader. These are the four themes. Shubhayu, the second segment is where you can ask questions to each of the participants. So, that's towards
Yeah.
the last part of it. So yeah, we'll start off with Priyanshi. Go ahead.
Thank you. So my first question is that we're living in a time where technology and human connection are becoming important and they're coming together like never before, specifically in the world of HR. AI is changing the way we work, we hire, we build inclusive spaces. But at the end of the day, the core focus of this entire effort is still the people. So I basically want to talk to you and ask you a question about in the hybrid and global environment, what do you think makes DEI truly meaningful? And how do you think organizations can personalize inclusion efforts so that every employee feels authentically represented without also compromising on the scale of the organizations at which they're operating?
Wow, that's quite a bit. So I'll start with one fundamental thing. As you have perhaps seen over the last few months and perhaps a year or so, how the DEI mandate has been, in my view, unfortunately changing. And I think it begs that question that, were we really seriously passionate about doing DEI and driving DEI, that just because something happened somewhere in one part of the world uh, made us change our approach. And I genuinely believe that if you strongly, fundamentally, it's part of your DNA and you believe in that, whatever be the initiative, whatever be the movement, that reflects in actions. And today, companies who have genuinely driven the DEI agenda, genuinely believed in what it brings to the table, and that's kind of that's proven multiple times. I mean, there's enough data that I have seen in my organizations, and I'm talking about just one small component of DI, which is gender. There's enough data that I've seen which clearly articulates that retention and performance of women employees are higher. Now, then it's a no brainer, isn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you want more women in the workforce when clearly it has an impact on the business, right? So I genuinely feel that unless, as organizations, as leaders, we have embedded this into a strong belief system of how we run organizations, we'll always fall back and uh, not be genuine and passionate about driving it. So, coming back to your question, I think while I shared my fundamental belief, I also see that organizations which have followed the track of genuinely driving and believing in it, nothing has changed for them. on the DEI agenda. In fact, some companies that I know, including ours, are deliberately with intent looking at focusing on how we can uh, enhance our DEI mandate, just not gender diversity, but I think, if you were to look at it, the first step would be even uh, inclusivity in thinking. How do we create a culture where everybody's voice is heard respectfully? That is, for me, is the first step of inclusivity, right? And that is so powerful because it creates an environment where people are able to contribute with psychological safety. Unless you create that in organizations, you will miss so much of wealth of value that your employees can provide, agnostic of career levels, agnostic of age, agnostic of background, but just based on capability and skills, right? So I don't know if that kind of attempts to answer your question, but since it's also in the context of technology, one thing that I would like to kind of reiterate as a central theme in today's conversation is that technology is something which will help us perhaps be more efficient and effective. It will sharpen our ability to take decisions, but it can't dull our humanity. It can't take away fundamentals of fairness. It can't erode compassion. It can't take away the fact that you need to respect and value people, right? So yeah, so that would be my kind of an attempt to respond to your extremely erudite question, Priyanshi.
Right. And that brings me to my second question as well, that as AI becomes more embedded in the HR processes, specifically when it comes to operational processes, as you mentioned, how do you ensure that bias detection tools support rather than replace human judgment and empathy and the values that you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, Ravi, I'm eternally grateful that I graduated so many years back, because if I had been in the same college with these smart youngsters, the probability of me even, passing the course would have been pretty difficult. But anyway, I will try to still attempt to respond to your question. I think fundamentally, whatever little I understand of AI, including the entire end-to-end life cycle, if at all it has been created for AI, is that it's very important to design any algorithm or anything that drives the AI with the human principles in mind. So more and more you will realize that we need HR people, business people who have a flair for data. They are functionally strong, but they also have fundamentals of empathy. So these three elements are critical to make you a complete leader. Even when I say leader, for me, every person in an organization, in a function, is a leader in their own right. The levels are very different, the expectations are different, but still you are a leader. And these three skills are critical for you to become an effective, efficient, and relevant leader in today's context. So AI tools will flag potential biases, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it, because it will look at past data, look at trends, and predict it. But it can't be making the final call. I mean, you need still humans to help understand, and these humans, as I said, need to be trained in data literacy. They need to be functionally strong, and they need to be empathetic, right? And they would be the ones who will define. Sorry, they will define, of course, the algorithms, but they will also interpret the AI outputs in a manner which brings a lot of context to the data. It can't be a data being inferred and acted upon in isolation. And when that human interface comes in with the data literacy or flair for understanding data, uh, functionally strong. So if it's a data around, or AI around HR, I genuinely believe that everybody, each one of you pursuing a career in HR, while data literacy is critical, but functional competence is equally important, right? And you got to be people who realize that every action you take transforms somebody's lives, because you are in the human resource function. So the moment you have these three skills for somebody who is handling HR, I think the biases will be interpreted the right way in the right context. That's the way I look at it.
Right. I mean, I completely agree with your point, and thank you so much for this answer. Really helps me get some more perspective on this topic itself.
Great. I feel very reassured.
Shruti, go ahead.
Thank you, sir, and Priyanshi, for such a start to our conversation on inclusion and fairness. Now, I would like to take the discussion a step further into how technology and human connection can coexist meaningfully. So, sir, in today's workspaces, where AI and data driven tools guide so many of our HR decisions, so the question I often reflect on is this: how do leaders preserve and human warmth in recruitment? And how do we make sure that every candidate still feels seen, heard, and valued beyond what an algorithm measures?
Yes, look, at the end of the day, I think, when you hire for, I fundamentally believe, right, and this is not something necessarily that everyone has to believe, but I do fundamentally believe that at the end of the day, when you hire someone, it's a gamble. It's a gamble which the company takes, which it's a gamble which the individual takes. So it's extremely critical. The probability of the gamble not failing through actions of the process, you try to reduce, rather they increase the probability of success, right? And to do that, you've got this amazing AI which will help you do the first screening, will help you ensure biases are taken care of, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, you are still hiring for skill and you're hiring for attitude. And for me, sometimes the attitude is far more important than the skill. You can always build the skill. And to understand that, you still need to have a human conversation. While, thankfully COVID is behind us, today my advice to all the recruitment leaders, including the one in my organization, and he himself drives that, we want to meet every candidate face to face, ideally. Because what it does is it allows both parties to see each other, sense each other, understand each other. Still a gamble, because in 1 hour of discussion you don't necessarily will ensure a foolproof 100% foolproof decision. But again, the whole attempt is to reduce the probability of failure. In fact, typically what we do is for senior level roles in our organization, we want multiple stakeholders, including peers, to have a conversation. And we genuinely believe it's a time well invested, because it allows both parties to see each other, sense each other, understand each other. So that, in my view, is of far more importance than just the initial screening, which perhaps AI will help you, and it does. It helps in making it more efficient, it helps in streamlining. So, the initial screening, scheduling, all of that can be automated or done through AI. But the final decision of, deciding, and the decision is not just the organizations, even the individual. Should I join this place? When I meet all these people I'll work with, do I see a sense of value alignment? That is something which is critical. And ultimately, that plays a huge role. I worked with Ravi in a company called Wells Fargo. The amount of investment we would make in looking at the culture fit was tremendous, including the managing director getting involved in some of the conversations. Why? And I think that would happen even now. If it's a company that I would believe is taking the right call in the way it's operating, it's very important to do that, because it then makes you understand exactly the point which will help the individual succeed in that environment of the company that they are planning to join.
Thank you, sir, for it was insightful. And now that brings me to my next question. So, could you, sir, share an instance from your experience where a tech-driven HR initiative actually strengthened the human connection rather than distancing it?
Right. So it seems that each one of you have two questions, and kind of marveling at the kind of preparation, the thought each one of you would have given, because I'm kind of I understood from Priyanshi her two questions. Now I'm hearing the two from you, and both I mean, both of you have obviously come up with some tremendously interesting questions, which puts me in a spot of bother because I have to respond. But anyway, I'll still try. I think one example that just comes to my mind, a very recent thing, is that we said that, hey, what we want to look at, we want to look at the employee pulse, not at the end of a year, which is typically how engagement surveys get run, right? Uh, while we do have focus groups which are there, in terms of actual physical connects, where a HR business partner would talk to an employee or talk to a group of employees, can we also run a run a survey which automatically gets done every quarter to sense a pulse of how people are feeling, what's their NPS that they would give to us. So the ENPS we do on a quarterly basis. Now what it has done is, it has helped us not only get a feel of how people are feeling, but also that auto survey that goes to every employee also checks on how, some good things that they feel about the company, and something they would want to be better in the company, right? And that helps us, based on data and analytics, to look at trends experience wise, uh, gender wise, career level wise, right? And tenure in the organization. So overall experience, tenure in the organization, gender, career levels. And then it helps us take a call as to how we can solve some of those areas that people have given us feedback to work on. And it's not a surprise that some of them are common concerns. Some of them are very specific to a line of business, or to a population cohort. Because today's workforce is multi-generation. So what it has helped us do is reach out to people in a very structured manner, address issues which are very specific to specific cohorts, and most importantly, give the message that we value the feedback that is coming and we are acting on it, right? So this is one example which is very basic, but it has really helped us, instead of just the one-on-one connects, because in large organizations you somehow are not able to do that, and unless you have technology to support you, you then miss out on the feedback or the voice of your employees, which is so important as you strive to become a really great place to work in.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, sir. So, bringing on to the next theme, sir, I want to bring a more of a strategic and analytical lens to this podcast, where long-term sustainable planning goes hand in hand. So, sir, in the industry, like across industry, we are seeing that most of the businesses are now heavily investing on HR tech. And this brings me to my first question, where now predictive analytics is transforming workforce planning, but human motivation often defies prediction. So, how can organization use this data wisely without losing that touch with people's unpredictability and passion? Because you mentioned about the pulse of an employee. So, this is the dilemma I want to ask about.
So one thing I should have clarified, while I'm quite old by now, I think still I've always felt comfortable if you call me Shubhayu. I don't think I deserve to be called sir in any way, and but yeah. So just keep that in mind. I know I should have kind of indicated this earlier, right, when we started. But coming back to your question, I think it goes back to the same point, Chaitanya. I think data analytics, all of that, all of that are enablers, right? I mean, they help you come to decisions, and they're one of the inputs to taking a decision, not the only input. One example I've always given, and this was before all the analytics and data came into our world, which is that performance management, right? A process which most people dislike. HR always kind of gets pulled up for performance management. So there are two things you realize when you start working there. that you will never be able to make people happy on. One is compensation. Nobody that I've met on this planet Earth is ever happy with their salary, right? And the other is performance management, which, by the way, has an input into your salary increases and bonuses and stuff like that, right? So when we talk about performance management, I have worked with multiple leaders. Some of them have believed that it should be completely metrics driven, right? There's a KPI, there's an achievement, and then depending on the achievement, you get a performance rating, and depending on the weightage of that KPI, you multiply the weightage with the rating, and out comes a weighted rating. And if you add up all the weighted ratings for 5 or 6 KPIs, then you get your final rating as per a scale. So can't you design something like this, Shubhayu? Why do you need, and it has to be completely objective, because if you do it this way, you're got an objective performance management system. And my fundamental question is, why do we need managers? If it's all about just objective way to evaluate people, it's always an objective way of taking decisions on people, whether it's career management, talent management, performance management, all of that, or even hiring, right? Why do I need a manager, right? I mean, you can put the data into a system, and the outcome's the rating, right? There is a reason why you have a manager, because the manager then contextualizes the event which led to that outcome. It can't be just a number. We are talking about human being. Numbers are important, very, very important. But my, again, humble submission is, it can't be just a number. When you deal with human beings, you're dealing with gray. Human beings are not binary. And the faster we understand this, the easily we respect and agree to this, it will become easier to then lead teams in an objective manner, right? So again, coming back to your question, I think they coexist. For me, when we're going HR tech, as we keep saying right now, almost every other process, there's a platform, and sometimes one common platform through which you do end-to-end employee lifecycle management, right? When we're designing, when we're selecting some of those HRMS platforms, my question has been that you can take the Rolls Royce of the HRMS platform, the best company that gives you a solution. Will that make you a hero? Will that make your people processes fantastic? The answer is no. Because unless you have the people process defined the right way, the tool is just an enabler. Whatever you design, that platform will enable. If there's a fundamental flaw in the process, if that process doesn't speak your values, your culture as an organization, if it's not aligned to be market competitive, if it's not hyper personalized to the kind of employee base you have, a tool will fail, because tool is not the master, tool is a slave. The master is still the people process, which is why I keep on saying that today's HR talent needs to have data and tech literacy, no doubt about it, but functional strength, depth in the craft, which is HR knowledge, can never be compromised. And overlaying all of that is empathy, compassion, and the fact that we are dealing with human beings.
I feel really privileged to be a part of this podcast, because this was really insightful and this is really helpful. So, this brings to me my second
Shubhayu.
question. Yeah, Shubhayu. Yeah, thank you, Shubhayu. This brings me to my second question. What does sustainable talent ecosystem look like in your view? One that leverages AI for efficiency but keeps trust and well-being at its core.
Yeah, so I think, ultimately at the end of the day, what is becoming even more critical today is the culture and purpose of organizations. Always was very important. Now it's becoming even more important, primarily for a few reasons. One is that your work conditions are changing. Now you've got a hybrid work environment in a lot of places, right? Which means sometimes people don't even get to meet their peers, their managers. They don't even get to see their company, right? The nature of work arrangements is changing. There are gig workers coming in. There are people who work on projects. People take a break in between and come back, right? So there are multiple changes which are happening to the organization ecosystem. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. I mean, if you don't keep that in mind, then eventually you'll create, a one cookie cutter approach which will never work, which makes it even more important that when you look at culture and values, that's the only thing which will hold everything together, right? And there are organizations which are saying that, what, when you design and define culture, because we exist in a Barney world where things keep changing every second, right? Can you ensure that there are certain core elements of the culture which will never change? That's who you are, right? And then there are certain elements of the values and culture which will change depending on the business cycle, the environment, the way the work arrangements are changing, the way the geopolitical situation is having an impact on your business, where one, you might have to be really really acting fast. So your ability to, your learning agility becomes important. Now tech savviness, data literacy becomes important, which wasn't the case before. Those things will be linked to what I believe is the environment, which is external. What you have to manage, build, you actually have to design, build, and manage. Agnostic of the external environment is the core, right? Respect for people, organization with a purpose, valuing human beings. I think these are fundamentals. It doesn't matter which company you are, which space you are in, because every company that works in any business space, their biggest assets are people. And hence, those core which are linked to people should be something which should not change. That will hold the organization together, agnostic of what's happening around, which is the external parameters. And that's the part where you want to design it, which is more aligned to changes, while the core remains the same. So that's fundamentally the way I look at it. That, hey, what, with tech, with data, all that is critical. But if your core, which holds everything together, is very, very strongly defined and experienced by employees. So today, a lot of people who join organizations look at what's the purpose of the company, how well are they invested in CSR, what's their mandate or view on DEI, right? How are they looking at employee wellness? No longer it's about compensation and role alone. Those are important, but the other aspects are equally important, and that's core to you. So both have to coexist.
Thank you, Shubhayu. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
So Shubhayu, actually, there were few striking elements that you brought in the answers about Chaitanya, which also brings me to my segment of today's discussion, which makes me feel that you have spoken about culture and how people today have been looking at what is the purpose of the company as well. So if you have to think of young professionals who are going to join HR as a vertical or go into HR field in some or the other way, how can we strike a balance between tech fluency and emotional intelligence, keeping people at the center of every decision that we make?
Yep. Great question, Janice. I know you probably have one more such complicated one to ask, but let's start with this one. Again, I'll just kind of be looking at Ravi in case he would like to add anything. But our experiences together in Wells Fargo made us realize, believe in, and practice how important culture could be to build psychological contracts. Psychological contract is essentially something far more compelling and powerful than a regular contract, which is, when you join a company, you get an offer letter. When at the end of the year, you get an increment letter. All those are physical contracts, which are necessary. But psychological contract is in the mind, in the relationship you built with an employee, right? And that's most compelling. And culture is the key to it. And I genuinely have experienced and believe that if you can create that culture, which really is experienced by employees in everything they see, they do, including the way we do business, the way our people processes are designed, the way leadership behaves, the way we reward and recognize people. They will start aligning, integrating those tenets of culture into their DNA. And who's the custodian of culture? HR. So, those of you, I mean, when I joined HR, this was because the college I went to had an option that you needed to decide on right at the beginning, that you either get into HR or general management. And I always felt that when I looked at placement brochures, the only person smiling was the CHRO. So I thought HR is a very easy job. Little realizing that when you sign up for HR, you are actually getting into a function where you have this amazing opportunity and responsibility to impact people's lives. Whoever you are in HR, and I mean this, and Ravi has probably heard me say this multiple times, whoever you are in HR, at whatever level, in whichever function in HR, every action you take has an impact on someone's life. I know it sounds melodramatic, but it keeps me going because that gives me that passion and pride in what I do. And it also helps me, that feeling is also like a conscience keeper to me, that I ask myself, when I take an action, am I impacting and creating a warm moment for that employee? Right? Now the good news is you have data, you have ability to analyze data and get behavior patterns or incident patterns which help you form an opinion, not a judgment, form an opinion, and that is enabling you to be even a better HR professional. The entire suite of technology is helping you streamline a lot of operational work which you would have to do earlier. So you can focus now more in an advisory capacity based on your functional knowledge and empathy to impact people's lives one-on-one. Because the transaction stuff is getting reduced. Right? If you look at the entire employee life cycle today, a lot of transactional stuff in talent acquisition, in onboarding, in performance management, in career development, every step of HR is being reduced, which is great news. So, you're extremely fortunate in that sense, is because when I joined Line HR, because I started my career in consulting, in my first job in Line HR, the first thing I learned was how to fill up a PF nomination form, a Provident Fund nomination form, right? And I genuinely believe that, I'm still very proud of the fact, because when I sign a PF nomination form on behalf of the company, I know what I'm signing on. Because I used to help employees fill that up. And you know what my role was then? I was the head of HR. A lot of people didn't know that I was the only person in the HR team. That's why I was the head of HR. But it helped me do end to end. At the same time, it took away a lot of time to do that end to end because it was so transactional and operational, and there was no technology and no platform to help me do that. So I'm sure my time could have been better utilized, which now the opportunity is there. But it still doesn't take away the fact that as HR people, we transform, impact, forget transforming, we impact people's lives. And if you do it the right way, we transform people's lives. And we are ultimately the culture conscience keepers. We're not policemen. And this is something I keep telling all business leaders, that we design policies with inputs from the business and employees, but we are not police people. It's the responsibility of every employee in the organization to ensure that we are aligned to the policies and practices, right? But yes, we are definitely conscience keepers, and that's a very onerous task. Remember the Spider-Man movie, which talked about along with power comes responsibility? HR people are considered to be, in a very negative way, very powerful. Yes, we are, because we have access to a lot of data, we have access to a lot of insights, which for the organization, right? Which some of the business leaders also wouldn't have. They would have it only for their own businesses. And as a HR leader, as a HR person, you would have that access to that information, which sometimes makes us feel powerful. We are, but we need to be more responsible as well.
So I think this is something that we all are going to hold on to. The element of how we are going to impact people's life, and we're going to probably attempt in transforming those lives. So I actually wanted to also dig deeper into your experience, and since you have led teams across different geographies and different cultures, could you tell us what universal values or what universal human values basically you believe should be the anchor of any HR technology initiative, regardless of the context or the industry?
Wow. Ravi, I think we need to screen some of these questions. Too tough. I mean, you need to correlate them to the person who is being asked these questions. Because there's also a linkage to ability and capability to respond. But anyway, since you've asked this question in public, I'll also attempt. Uh, I think fundamentally what has never changed is we're still in the people business, right? Anything we do is to do with people, right? So when you design, so a technology will enable the process. So I think that's where I talked about the fact that somebody who is designing the process versus somebody designing the process 5 years back, the only difference they find is we need more people who understand their data literacy is far higher. The tech literacy should be far higher, right? Why? Because then their ability to connect dots across different people processes become that much more easier for them to understand that. However, along with that, and I'm repeating myself, it's very important to have that functional knowledge. And that functional knowledge is all centered around employee experience, right? Which is what really helps you validate whether you're designing the process the right way or not. If you were to look at sitting back after you've designed a process, which the tool or the technology will enable, that comes later. Remember the master slave? You're still at the master stage, you're designing the process. Typically, what I've tried to do at times, not always I've succeeded, is that when we have designed a new process, we have made an employee go through it just to see how the employee is responding to it. Is it really helping the person? It becomes even more critical. So today, and I keep joking about this, that I work in a team, especially in the HR team that works with me. 50% of that population is 5 years older than my daughter, and that really helps. You know why? Because can you imagine, as a CHRO, I am designing or signing off on a process with my pair of lens, with my pair of eyes. And the process is going to be designed to be effective across an organization workforce where 60% of them are 5 years older than my daughter. Now, so how does it help to have that younger team? Because then they come and start poking holes. Because they help me be very logical and very honest that, hey, you know what? Functionally, principally, what you've designed is right. But hey, you know what? This is where it will not work effectively for this population. So I think that hyper personalization, while keeping your principles in place, right? Principles come from values. Remember, we talked about the values, the core, the principles come from there. So your principle, you're not kind of compromising your principles, but you're fine-tuning it so that it becomes relevant to the workforce for whom you're designing it. It becomes even more tricky because the workforce is probably 60-70% of that population, but there's still a 30% which is probably a generation, my generation, or a generation slightly younger than mine. So it's a mixed bag, right? So I think it's very important that as HR leaders, we are continuously recalibrating how we ensure that the principles remain the same, but the manifestation of the principle in that policy document or the process guideline is able to address effectiveness and relevance in such a disparate employee population base. So then if you have that, and if you achieve even 80%, that's great. Then comes the question of how the slave will enable that master, which is the technology. So that's the way I look at it.
So I think you explained something so complex in such a simple way. I think all of us here, we are going to enter the HR vertical, and I believe these answers are going to stay with us close to our heart because we spoke about something that is so natural to us, the human values. And we are going to be struggling to balance how we are going to still keep them close to us and tackle ourselves around the widely dynamic segment of HR tech. So, thank you so much for sharing both these answers.
Janice, yeah, I mean, honestly, it perhaps is also because of the fact that I'm a very simple person. I'm not very intelligent. I sometimes struggle to understand what strategy is because I've always believed that if you're not brilliant at your basics, rest of it is meaningless. And sometimes we struggle at being brilliant at basics. Uh, that's the first step, right? So when I say that the PF nomination form I had to fill myself, today you will have a technology or some platform which will enable that. Sometimes the only fear that I have is that uh, the fact that I did it physically, manually, it added an element of knowledge into my quiver of arrows. That will go away now because there will be HR professionals who will never understand how a PF nomination form is filled, right? So it's a very, very fine balance, and sometimes I'm very happy that I'll retire in the next 5 to 6 years from the corporation because I don't have to face all the complex struggles each one of you will face. But I genuinely also believe that since all of you have signed up for HR, I think it's important that you keep in mind that it's at the end of the day a human being that you work with, and the responsibility is huge. Uh, it's a tough world, my friends, but solid, good HR people can make such a significant difference.
Absolutely, Shubhayu. I think a lot of insights in this particular podcast, and the Campus Catalyst series has actually been brought up because we actually wanted this one-to-one kind of connects with corporate leaders, Shubhayu. We always had volume kind of training where the leader actually stands and you have 100 or 400 people actually during induction. But I think this is where transformation actually happens because each one is actually going to reflect in terms of the kind of insightful inputs you have given. Going back to Wells, Shivai, as you so many times reflected back, I know the kind of leaders there. And I remember the induction that Avik actually is given, a Tane or you, or the technology leaders and the operations leaders. There's been a kind of a trend where they always spoke about values and the very fact that we need to be more humane while being process oriented and while also using technology as such. And the respect that each one of us, each one of them actually had with each other was very reflective when they actually spoke. And it was like a family. Wells was always like a family. And if you look at the kind of podcast that I did the last 1.5 years, I think 80% of the leaders are from Wells. And a lot of people even now comment it, why are only getting leaders from Wells? Because that's where I actually saw leadership in action. And to you guys, the kind of leader Shubhayu is. I want to give one example before I give it to him. There was one particular instance where one of our colleague wrote a funny kind of email. He was not too good at English in terms of writing an email, so he wrote something to a lady employee who just joined recruitment. And she felt very insulted. She went and complained to the manager, and the matter actually went to Shubhayu. And I remember the way he actually handled my friend. He would never actually do that mistake once again. So we always looked up to Shubhayu, and I still remember, I think 2.5, 3 years back, I wrote a post on Shubhayu in terms of his last day there. I was just sitting, my place was just next to him. And we had a kind of a crowd right from the associate financial analyst to the vice president, senior vice presidents, actually walking in right from the morning and until late evening while he was leaving. He was so popular. Even now, he's very, very popular because he was very, very humane, not very, very human. He's always being human. And that quality is something which I wanted, the students to actually imbibe in this particular format. So thanks a lot, Shubhayu, for taking your time. And it's now your chance. It's the last segment. The guys have grilled you with a lot of tough questions. It's your You can actually ask whatever questions you want.
Yeah, yeah, it's always good to be on the other side. But Ravi, thanks so much for such kind words. I think it's not me. I think it's the environment that we built together, which made the difference. And it wouldn't have been successful if all the leaders had not got aligned to what they genuinely believe themselves to be behaviors that they would want to instill in employees and the ways of working. uh, so it was just not doing the induction. I think induction set the way of creating that awareness of ways of working. We used to call those sessions wow,
Yeah.
ways of working in Wells Fargo. But even a step before, I think what really helped, and this is something I'm sharing with you so that you can understand the impact or how the impact can happen. Every step of the employee life cycle, we would sit down as a HR team, including leaders like Ravi, to look at if these are our values. Uh, is that process speaking that value? If the process is not speaking the value, then it's something that we need to review and change. Because the process is something which the employee will experience, right from hiring to the way we give feedback to the way we reward people, the way we look at talent, right? Everything has to speak those tenets of values, because that's how employees experience. Even when we designed workstations in the good old days in Wells, we said that we won't have any cabins. Why? Because we are an open organization. We don't want cabins with doors shut. So, including the managing director, everybody sat outside. Now, again, Wells is very different now, and I'm not getting into what worked then and what will work now. I'm talking about the time when we were there, and that's what we believed, and that's what we wanted to have in every step of what we did with our employees, right from designing office layout, where people will sit, how people will sit, right, including HR processes, including recognition, rewards, promotions, talent management. The whole purpose was that if these are your values, these are things which are core to you, they should reflect in every aspect. Remember, employees spend one third of their lives minimum working in organizations. Now, how do we make that impactful, transformational, valued, is all reflected in the way we looked at some of these things in those days in Wells. So I think, Ravi, it always kind of brings up those memories whenever we talk about Wells and how we kind of build that organization from being a small technology company to now it's about 35, 40,000 in the GCC space across multiple geographies. Okay, question time for you all. So is there any order, Ravi, or I can just kind of
Your wish, your wish.
okay. So I think we've got 6 minutes left. So Priyanshi, question for you. Uh, was HR a natural choice?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was always somebody who was interested in, and also banking on the fact that I majored in psychology in my graduation. I was always interested in the people aspect of the world, understanding how what anchors human behavior. And I liked to be around people, like to understand processes which involve humans in general. So, and a lot of people asked me this question even when I took up my MBA, that why would you leave psychology and, choose the business side of things? But like I mentioned in my question as well, people are the center of the business. There is no business if there are no people at the end of the day. Your top line, your bottom line, everything is affected by how the people in the organization feel and when they work. So, therefore, for me, HR was a very natural progression for somebody who was interested in people. It's just that instead of studying people in a clinical setting, you were studying them in a business setting. How they're Even if you look at other aspects other than HR, like consumer behavior marketing, at the end of the day, the basis of those subjects are still people. How people think and feel, and how can you sell a particular product to them. That's also completely based on pure psychological concepts. So for me, definitely it was a very natural progression. And as I have grown into the field and I have experienced and worked with a few organizations, I realize how important it is for leaders to understand people first. And like you mentioned, skills and competencies related to the function can always be developed with time.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. Uh, Janice, if not HR, what else, what other subject would you have chosen and why?
I think after psychology, if not HR, I would have gone for marketing because I believe that the second area of interest for me would be marketing in the context of how we as people or we as businesses have been presenting ourselves to the population and how the psyche works around it. What are the areas that we can tap onto? What are the areas that still need a lot of learning, a lot of research? So I believe my interests of research and human curiosity always aligns with how marketing also works. So if I had not been in HR, I probably think I would have gone for marketing.
Great answer. I mean, Ravi, I'm just amazed at the clarity of thought youngsters today have. Of course, the knowledge as well. And I keep talking about a term which I've coined since I've joined the place where I work now, which is that this generation brings informed audacity to the table.
Yes.
So there's so much of information you folks have, and you would respectfully not be bothered about, hey, what hierarchy and all that. As long as you have a point which is backed with data information, you would never hesitate to question.
Absolutely.
And that really keeps oldies like me honest as well. So yeah, great answer. I think when I did my MBA, apart from the CHRO smiling CHRO's face on the placement brochure, I just felt that finance needed more smartness. I'm not getting into any debate here whether it's true or not. Marketing was not something that I felt an introvert like me would want to do. Yeah, I mean, you might be kind of amazed to know that what am I doing in HR being an introvert, but fundamentally I'm an introvert, and hence it seemed to me that because I was also, I mean, having worked in as an engineer for 4 years, I've seen and experienced working with people. So I just felt that I could perhaps make some difference there. So that's why HR, but never so logically thought through like you know Priyanshi or you, Janice. Thank you. Uh, Shruti, here's a question for you. Uh, so tell me something. If you were to be given a role, uh, in HR, uh, and this might be a bit of a googly, would you want to do line HR or consulting, and why?
Uh, it's an interesting question, but I would choose consulting because for now it's not like liner consulting, but I would go for consulting because it's more where I could interact with people. So I really need interaction because I can't sit silent. So that would be one of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, good answer. The reason why I asked is I started with consulting, and it wasn't again a well thought through decision. It's just that a consulting company came on that day and was gracious enough to hire me. So it was a job I got, and I got into consulting. But yes, but one advice that I would have is sometimes, because it's a completely new field. So what the advantage of getting into consulting was, at any given point in time, you're doing variety of assignments. So you could be designing a performance management framework or a variable pay design, or getting into org design, and across multiple industries. So I was in PwC Consulting, which is a small consulting business. We did practically everything that came our way, and did it. So as I said, so that one had that opportunity to be spread thin, but that helped us build breadth and also depth. Breadth was across industries, depth was across HR processes, right? But one disadvantage I had was I had never done HR before, and here I was, pushed into the deep end of the pool, trying to advise CHROs. Um, so that was sometimes a bit presumptuous, because I didn't have that knowledge of uh, of actual reality. I had the theoretical knowledge, right? So my advice always is that typically you should start in line HR and get into consulting. But in my case, I didn't have a choice, but it worked reasonably well, I guess. Yeah. But thanks for your response. Chaitanya, you're the only person left now.
Yes, sir. Yes, Shubhayu.
Yeah. So, my question to you is about, the more and more you hear about, you know, leadership today, uh, you also hear about concepts around authentic leadership, humane leadership. Why would you think it's suddenly becoming a buzzword? Any thoughts?
So I feel that the coming generation is becoming more and more aware, and they care about how they are being treated, how their work environment really is. And I feel that it's it's more about this generation has learned to advocate for themselves, and to do that they really need to understand how their leaders are thinking, working, what their perspective is. This not only helps them to advocate themselves, but then it also helps the coming generation to understand the perspective of the person who's sitting there or leading the whole firm. So I think it's more of a generational thing where, as on Gen Z is now getting into the workforce, and the way our country has developed, obviously the coming generation will be more aware of things. And so that's what I feel, that it's becoming more of a buzz thing because people are now more aware, and because the coming generation is becoming more aware, the leaders also want to catch up and be at the same level. So I feel that that is why these things are, coming at the surface level.
So Ravi, I'm super impressed with every response that I'm getting. I mean, honestly, I don't run my consulting organization, and we have only so many opportunities in HR in my company. Otherwise, I would have hired all four of you. Such brilliant people, I must say. And I'll just kind of reflect back on your response, Chaitanya. I think the reason why I found it to be a wonderful response is it is one of the key reasons as to why these concepts are suddenly becoming buzzwords, because I don't think there was no requirement of human leadership or authentic leadership in the past. It was there as well, but it's becoming even more now because of the workforce. I think the workforce is, as you rightly said, is aware. They are willing to stand by for their rights. They're asking those questions. I mean, in the past, so many of people around me I've seen endure toxic work culture because they didn't have the environment to stand up. Uh, okay, let me take a step back to your point. They didn't have the social conditioning where they felt that they could question and stand up for their rights. Secondly, there was no ecosystem which permitted it. Thirdly, I do believe that maybe it's linked. The awareness was not there, right? So today it's all of that is there, and I think what is also happening, apart from the individual and the generation of workforce, the environment around is very very complex. uh, I mean, look at the way trolling is. It's bullying, right? So in the past, if a friend bullied me in class, it would end in the class. It would end in the school. Today it gets extended because there's a post that happens in some platform, then few other people respond to that post, and it continues on and on and on. So the degree of stress which is induced in the system is far more, exponentially more than what it used to be in the past, which is where I think the world requires much more grace, kindness, empathy than ever before. And you know what? I honestly believe that COVID, in some perverse manner, had made humankind much more caring. But sad, but good that COVID went. But unfortunately, we rebounded, some of us, to our earlier evil and cruel selves, where the world needs to be far more kinder, far more compassionate, far more filled with empathic leaders, right? So it's a combination of the workforce and the fact that they are willing to stand up now. They are far more aware. They will not tolerate toxicity. They will not tolerate nonsense. And the other is because there's so much of stress in the system. So it's important as leaders We don't add to it. We're rather more sensitive, more caring. So it's a combination of both. But great answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Super. I think it's a
Shubhayu.
masterclass in facilitation, I should say. I think the way you interacted with the students over the 1 hour, it's not just answering the questions, but actually getting into their understanding and then coming down to their particular level, Shubhayu. Thanks so much for your time. Uh, Now, we actually dealt with four themes as such. We looked at human AI equation led by Priyanshi in modern HR, human connection in a tech world led by Shruti, strategic and analytical lens by Chaitanya, and curiosity driven emerging leadership by Janice as such. Thanks so much, Shubhayu, for your time. Thanks so much for the student leaders, for asking those sometimes insightful, sometimes impossible kind of questions to answer. But great talent over there. Wish you the very best in your careers and be in touch with us, with Shubhayu and us. And as I said, all of the leaders are more than welcome to actually have a chance to speak with you. And happy Diwali to all of you. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. Happy Diwali to all of you, and thanks for helping me learn so much. And that's the thank you to you, Ravi, as well. A, for picking up this extremely relevant topic for conversation, building it around these four pillars, and helping me be honest and also perhaps be made aware through these young minds of what lies ahead. And it's always such a privilege to have a conversation with young group of leaders. Thank you so much.
Most welcome, Shubhayu. Thank you, guys.
Take care. All the best.